In a world gone mad, only one man, okay maybe more, had the courage to ramble on incoherently. The show is up and the reviews are in. This is the show that many people have described as good. Uninterrupted, Wednesday nights on Tag TV. We're good? Okay. Welcome to all the fisher folk out there watching It People Kind. This week is going to be ranty. I tried to make notes. They didn't flow in sequence that well, so we just have research, no notes. We'll see how this goes. I've done that a few times already, so we're going to be fine. All right, we have some very, very, very interesting word salad from the Prime Minister. We're going to go into a lot of bad ideas that kind of relate to the news. We have the terrorist attack that no one really told you about, and that's kind of interesting as we have no information. It's really a stunning story. So we'll talk about that. Salim Mansur, who I have his book right here, he was disqualified running as a Conservative candidate. I think that is really big news, and that says a lot about Canada, and that brings up a lot of bad ideas, Islamism, political cowardice, all that. We have the unions. So you might have been watching the Raptors game. Hopefully you were. I was. And you might have noticed there was this group called Engage Canada that was putting out these very anti-Andrew Scheer ads. Who is behind them? What are they doing? And we're going to go into a lot of the union-funded advertising and what are unions doing and why are unions not spending time supporting union workers and instead engaged in left-wing philosophy. We'll get into that. We also have Trudeau calls out the provinces for disagreeing with him. There's some pretty standard Trudeau operating. Then we got some interesting videos more from Al Quds Day and all the sort of bad ideas that come together to try and destroy Western civilization. You saw them all in play over the last week or 2 weeks or so. So I'm going to just try and summarize how these all have to relate with each other and say how you can be worried about, George Soros or globalism or all this without resorting to conspiracy theories. And I don't think you need any sort of conspiracy nonsense to make the case that Canada is ideologically under attack. All right, so let's get into it. Before we start tonight's episode, I want everyone to please stand if you're able and remove your hats as we are getting addressed by the glorious leader, Justin Trudeau. So,
What do you and your family do to cut back on plastics?
We have recently switched to drinking water bottles out of when we have water bottles out of a plastic, away from plastic towards paper, like drink box water bottles sort of things. There's an...
Oh, oops. That's right, guys. That is how we save the planet, by putting water in plastic bottles of drink box, paper box drink things. That's interesting. So no, I actually think this is a bit of an interesting story because it's being way overhyped and way underhyped in some other ways. The most important thing we need to know is Justin Trudeau's family, I thought it was a year, but no, they actually spent $300 a month on plastic water bottles last year. There was 1 month where they spent $300 on plastic water bottles. Maybe that was for the entire year. So we know he's lying. And we know he's an empty shell. So what people are focusing on, and I think it is an okay thing to focus on, is that he is completely empty. He's completely empty, and if you take him off topic or you ask him a question, it doesn't have to be hard. It just has to be, if you ask him any question that he doesn't have a scripted response from, you're going to get, right? It's like the fembots in Austin Powers when he's dancing around his underpants. That's what we get from Justin Trudeau. Now, the actual story here, well, there's two of them, is he lied, right? He straight up lied. He doesn't do that, right? We have a freedom of information in this country. We can say, no, you spent $300 a month on plastic water bottles. So he's a leader who just feels like he can reflexively lie. Now, people are rightfully angry at Trump when he just clearly makes things up on the go, right? Everyone loves me. The Queen was telling everyone she's never had more fun than when she was... The Queen probably was never like, guys, Donald Trump is so much fun. But this is just Trudeau feels like he can reflexively lie. And there's another thing to this. No one calls him out on it, right? You notice how the people are, Trump is so unusual. You get the Canadian media and CBC. We don't even know what's going on. Are we going to cover Canadian stories one day? Right? He can just reflexively lie. Yeah, we're cutting down. Are you a fucking idiot? It's so easy. What are you doing to reduce plastic consumption? Well, we got a Brita filter, so we're no longer using plastic water bottles. We drink tap water. How easy an answer is that? We don't use plastic water bottles. We drink tap water. Oh, out of a cup? Yes, out of a cup. Out of a paper cup machine? Like, no. Paper water bottles. Putz. So that's the thing of he just reflexively lies. Then there's a second story 1B from that is no one really calls him out when we see him lie. And, or the usual suspects do. It's only conservative media, right? There is this neutral media pretending to be neutral, which clearly is not. Right? And nowhere in the CBC does it say, oh, look at this horrible gaffe. Remember when George Bush tried to open a door that didn't open in Japan? That made it onto international news for a week. Okay? It was a silly clip, but it fit the narrative that George Bush is stupid. Now Justin Trudeau, who is actually stupid, gets caught in the most inane word salad over, how do you reduce plastic? Now here's the story 2 of this. It is that he is a do as I say, not as I do Prime Minister. And we've known this for a while on him. He is the Prince of Canada in his mind. His dad was King Trudeau. His grandfather made billions in the oil industry, which he's now trying to destroy. So he has no reasonable life experience. He is do as I say, not as I do. But this brings us to the actual thing of, we're talking about a plastic ban, right? We're going to ban single-use plastics, which will do nothing. Absolutely nothing. But here we have himself, where he's, we gotta do single-use plastic. What do you do for the environment, Justin, other than tell other people to do things, right? He has spent the most on air travel as any prime minister. Remember Catherine McKenna when she talked about, we just keep lying in the House of Commons? That was in Newfoundland. The next day, she was in Vancouver, flying cross-country. Okay, now I don't really think that's a big deal, flying cross-country across the world. If you have to be there, you have to be there. I mean, the government could say, you know what, for government policy meetings, let's institute a Skype thing. Let's Skype in. Save the environment. So here's where we have is fake environmentalism. It's fake, completely spurious. The only thing they do is they attack the oil industry, which you're going to get into very soon. And they talk about, save the whales, attack. The only environmentalism in Canada is just attacking the oil industry. And as I've shown you, as we've gone over on the show, since 2016, when the Paris Accords were signed, and Donald Trump pulled out of the Paris Accords, thus ending the world in 12 years as we know it, and that is an absolute fact. If the world's still here in 2032, well, I look foolish. The real problem with the environmentalism thing is the country that has reduced emissions the most since that point is the United States of America. These international accords, these showy things, this attack on the oil and natural gas industry. By the way, the attacks are all funded by American oil companies and Gulf State oil companies. They're the only ones who have the real interest in taking out Canadian oil against competition. But every reasonable study shows, it's just like in Ontario, it had green energy, it increased our emissions 50%. That's increased with a capital Dalton McGuinty. The best way to reduce emissions is to invest in efficient fossil fuels. I've gone over this because corporations in the energy industry. Now, I'm okay, sensible regulations. You gotta bioremediate the land after you use it. You can't just dump and whatever. We can have reasonable regulations, which the Canadian oil industry does apply. It's the cleanest oil in the world. But the oil industry does have a vested interest in making cleaner energy. And it's not because they care about the environment, it's because they care about making their product more efficient so it's more powerful, right, and therefore more valuable. Right? What is emissions? Right? Emissions is waste. Okay? The second law of thermodynamics applies. We're never going to get to, completely, free energy. But what emissions are is you burn something like coal or oil or natural gas. And all the energy that is burned and used to make an engine go is used up. It's all the wasted energy that gets blown out through the exhaust. That is emissions. That's bad for the environment. It's also bad for you because you spend more money than you need more oil. It's bad for the oil companies because their product's less valuable. Right? This is why oil took over for coal, because it burns more efficiently and therefore cleaner than coal. This is why natural gas is taking off, because it is to oil what oil was to coal. It burns more efficiently. So when Trump took all the regulations, all the sort of job-killing, energy-killing things off of the new forms of energy, right? He said all these new, cleaner, more efficient forms of energy, we're trying to destroy it because we're in this climate hysteria, where he took those efficiencies off, and then people went to the more efficient energy and then decreased emissions. Because increased efficiency decreases emissions. We know this, right? Everyone knows this, except maybe Justin Trudeau and Catherine McKenna. But no one has the stones to say this in public. And say, well, we still care about the environment or whatever, well, we have a different plan. He just wants to muddle his way around. So here we are, where we have the provinces are not happy with Justin Trudeau over his anti-Canadian, his fake environmentalism, right? The environmentalism that will is more likely to fund terrorists than trees, is the Prime Minister's, right? Which is let's dump tons of toxic waste and you know, human waste into the St. Lawrence River. Yeah, Catherine McKenna signs off on that. But straws, Q-tips, oh no, we need to ban them. It's so authoritarian with the ban. We must ban everything. Except his plastic water bottle. So here we go. So let's play this next clip and then I'll give it some context. Here's Justin Trudeau talking about 6 Conservative premiers who have taken opposition to Bills C-69 and C-48.
I think it's absolutely irresponsible for Conservative premiers to be threatening our national unity if they don't get their way. The fundamental job of any Canadian Prime Minister is to hold this country together, to gather us together and move forward in the right way. And anyone who wants to be Prime Minister, like Andrew Scheer, needs to condemn those attacks on national...
Now, some of you can do math. Other of you might vote for the NDP. So let's break this down. Remember I said 6 premiers are going against Trudeau? Now here's Trudeau reaming them out. You're un-Canadian! We're all about unity! Okay. There are 6 premiers mentioned, and there are 10 provinces. That means 6 is 60% of the premiers. And he's talking about unity. We need unity and unity and unity. We must agree with Justin Trudeau now! When 60% of the country elects people who run on a platform of these bills are killing our jobs, right? Let's stand up to this anti-Canadian, you know, right? It's anti-Canadian. These environmental bills are just anti-Canadian bills because we're fine with the oil coming in from Saudi Arabia and the United States because it's all being funded by Saudis and American oil companies. So Bill C-69, that's the anti-pipeline bill that has all these ridiculous restrictions on pipelines, and you know, if one chief somewhere sneezes, you can't build a pipeline. Right? They want to streamline the process. C-48 is the tanker bills. That's just BC being a bunch of dumb hippies. Sorry, BC. Hippies. Pfft. So the premiers stood up to him because that's what they ran on. They ran on, hey, we think this is killing Canadian industry. This is killing Canadian families because the cost of living is going up and up and up and up. This is the carbon tax. The carbon tax is it's crazy. It's absolutely crazy. If anyone thinks the carbon tax is going to save the environment, a lobotomy can only make you smarter. What is it? It's a 4th tax on fuel. Now, Justin Trudeau, as I said, he finally got taxes right about the carbon tax because taxes are a disincentive on something. Why we have a payroll tax is completely beyond me. But let's get back to the carbon tax, which is a 4th tax on fuel. Don't worry, everyone's going to get money rebated, and it's really a wealth distribution scheme. It's really a wealth redistribution scheme to save the environment. Sure. It's really another gas tax. So when you put a price on increased fossil fuels, that's everything in our economy. Number 1, food, right? Modern farming, unless you want to go back to slavery, personally, I'm very anti-slavery, you need fossil fuels. Right? Mechanized labor. All food is grown with fossil fuels. There's no rebate on farmers. Farmers are going to get killed in Canada. Unless they do what? Increase prices. So that's on food. Then the other thing fossil fuels do is they transport everything from point A to point B. So the carbon tax, don't worry, it's going to affect the rich. Only the rich. And by the rich, we mean anyone who buys or eats food and moves from point A to point B, or buys things that have been moved from point A to point B. Everyone. Except maybe some like Syrian refugees who get everything paid for. I think they'll be fine. How is that going to save anyone? Right? Because we can't, fuel isn't something that we can realistically cut back on. Yes, you can say, okay, I'm going to bike to work some days, but that's so minimal that we're talking about, at best, 0.02% of our net carbon emissions can be capped by some people deciding to bike to work sometimes to save money on fuel. But, you know, trucking industry still need to go, airplanes still need to fly, people still need to get back and forth from work, buses still need to run, people still need to eat food. Believe it or not, 9 out of 10 dentists tell us that people need food to live. Where are we going to, unless, it's so insane, right? So this is environmentalism. And here's my biggest problem with environmentalism. And it's not the alarmism. The alarmism is a big problem. But my biggest problem with the environmentalism is environmentalism is getting to a point where it's becoming anti-human. You're seeing so many people say, oh, I can't have kids now for the environment. Right? What is the point of environmentalism? And George Carlin has a great bit on this. I suggest anyone look it up. Where he basically says, no, you don't care about the planet. Environmentalists don't care about the planet. You care about you on the planet. Which is true. It's a good luck when people were booing him. But now it's the opposite way around. And that's bad. Right? The planet's going to be fine without us. Right? It's to survive meteors and asteroids and volcanic ash and apocalypse after apocalypse. We can nuke the world, right? In a million years, the Earth is going to be here. It's going to be fine. There'll be new species, whatever. We really care about prolonging human life on the planet. That should be the ultimate goal of environmentalism. But instead you have people saying, oh, we need population control and we need disease. But what is the point of environmentalism? Is it about, oh, we want less hurricanes, or we want less people to die in hurricanes? Because those are two very different things. Because option B is what we're going through right now. As countries get more developed, they get more efficient in using fuel, which means they eventually decrease their carbon emissions, and infrastructure grows, right? If you live in the infrastructure of Miami, right, Florida, hurricane season, right, building codes, American engineering, you're less likely to die in Miami. Now, a window could crash down and things happen and people die and Katrina happened, I get that. But when you look, when a class 4 hurricane hits Miami, the death toll will not hit double digits. The same hurricane can hit, rural Malaysia to a place that's a quarter as populated, and the death toll will be in triple digits. What do we want to prevent here? Do you want to prevent hurricanes, or do you want to prevent loss of life in hurricanes? What is the goal? And then growing number in the environmentalist unit are starting to say, yeah, population control, right? This Thanos did nothing wrong nonsense. Okay, one, Thanos, you could just double the resources in the universe instead of killing half the life. And two, the population would just rebound to its max capacity anyways. This guy knows nothing about biology or even economics. But Thanos aside, Thanos did do something wrong. Thanos is completely... I wish one of the Avengers had the ability or the superpower to explain economics. That would have been the number one Avenger. The most powerful Avenger would have been Milton Freeman. I digress. So this is the problem with environmentalism, where we have to hurt ourselves, we have to hurt the economy, we have to hurt the planet, we might have to kill the people, we might, right? This is why I said, I think in 50 years, the second most common form of terrorism will be environmental terrorism. It will never surpass the terrorism of peace, but we'll get environmental terrorism because it has everything you need. It has radical preachers, it has doomsday prophecies, right? And it has a disdain for human life. Right? It's a danger, right? This anti-human element to the environmental movement. Right? Oh, Thanos, we might have to kill half the people, it's a good idea. No, it's a terrible idea. One, because the population would just rebound within a couple hundred years anyway, and you'd be stuck with the problem. And if overpopulation was such a problem, how does it, when the Earth gets more populated, standard of living goes up? Riddle me that. All right, so that's environmentalism. That's bad idea number one. Now let's get to the other things we want to talk about. Let's talk about unions right now. So you might have been watching the Raptors game, hopefully you were, I was, and you might have noticed that there were some interesting commercials going on. Now if you're not watching the commercials, good for you. But you saw commercials from this is how it would go. You get a commercial from Unifor, which is the completely non-partisan union that in no way has any political opinions, just represents its workers. Oh, no, it actually declared itself the resistance to Andrew Scheer. And if you're wondering, Andrew Scheer isn't in office, so there's nothing to resist. So it's an anti-conservative union. That's all we know. Okay. Now, I have a problem with unions taking political stances because, spend money on your workers. Okay. So Unifor will put on things. But then we got these ads from Engage Canada, where they would launch 2 back-to-back ads. And I was just laughing the entire time through these ads because it was basically Andrew Scheer. He doesn't hate Doug Ford. And anyone who doesn't hate Doug Ford is Hitler. And the only good thing about Hitler, he wasn't Doug Ford. Vote for Adolf Hitler because he's not Doug Ford. Andrew Scheer once took a picture with Doug Ford, who wants to kill everyone. Also, Pol Pot did nothing wrong. Now, that was the basic gist of the commercial. I might have embellished some stuff here or there. But then it was always 2 commercials back to back. NBA Finals Game 5, that is an expensive advertising slot. Those go up to about $50,000 per commercial. And you saw 3 commercials back to back to back, and you saw it 3 or 4 times. You're looking at hundreds of thousands of dollars. They're probably going to spend millions of dollars in advertising pre-election. Now, here's how Canadian elections work. Now, I don't actually mind that Engage Canada is advertising. I think people have the right to. I have a different opinion from the Canadian government on this. So I'm not going to talk about them breaking the electoral laws or really skirting around them. But it's a real great illustration of how ridiculous our election campaign laws are. So I think it's completely fine for any Canadian citizen to spend money on political advertising at any point of the year. I think the only thing is, if you can create an organization and it does political advertising, you should have to reveal all your donors. That way we don't see Russian billionaires or Saudi oil merchants. We know where the money is coming from. I think anyone can say whatever they want in Canadian political advertising, whatever, as long as you just say where the money is coming from. I'm completely fine with money going into politics. I don't think it's as big a deal as people think, and as long as people know where the money is coming from, I'm fine with it. But for years now, the media has been freaking out over this conservative... We don't have super PACs. They're called third-party political advertisers in Canada. They're really super PACs, which I'm fine with. Right? As long as they're Canadian, spend money on advertising, right? Talk about political ideas. I do that, right? This can be somewhat construed as political advertising in a way, right? If I endorse a candidate over another. So the way Canada works is there's a specific window when the election is called, and it's about 78 days, and that is when, if you do political advertising, it's highly regulated, and if you advertise there, you have to be fully transparent. So what Engage Canada is doing, and they did this in 2015, is they're spending all this money advertising before the election window so they don't have to disclose. So this is political dark money. This is what I'm not okay with. I'm okay with them making commercials. Andrew Scheer once took a shit in a stall 3 doors over from Doug Ford. And Doug Ford is Doug Ford. And you know what about Doug Ford? He's called Doug Ford, and he is bad. Make that advertisement. You look like a fool. The only people, you're not convincing anyone in the middle. Oh, Doug Ford once stood next to Andrew Scheer. Oh, the humanity. Okay. Have fun with it. But because they're doing it this way, they're getting around the political advertising thing. And who is behind Engage Canada? So we have some people here. So the 2 people we know so far have been on the board of directors group. 2 directors. One is Kathleen Monk, who is the former campaign director for Jack Layton, who is the former head of the NDP, who was like, socialism, it's so important, I live in public housing, and drive fancy cars. Except when I go to campaigns and I take the bus, woo. And he is married, Jack Layton did marry a demon from the Netherrealm, known as Olivia Chow, and she is the worst. Also involved is Dave Green, former Deputy Chief of Operations for Dalton McGuinty. Ah, yes, Dalton McGuinty. If not for Kathleen Wynne being there at the end, really Dalton McGuinty and Kathleen Wynne split the Liberal term as Ontario Premier. Dalton McGuinty was a lot worse than Kathleen Wynne. Now, by the end of it, everyone just hated Kathleen Wynne, but a lot of Kathleen Wynne's hate, like 70% of it, was the screw-ups that Dalton McGuinty did, that she was a part of as well. All right, so I'm not taking her off the hook, but I'm saying Dalton McGuinty was worse than Kathleen Wynne, if we really want to break it down. Both terrible. Both really terrible. Both get F minuses, but Dalton McGuinty double F minus. We got his, and again, this is my opinion. Is this political advertising? Who knows? Now, here's some interesting thing. Jerry Dias, he is the head of Unifor, who we just mentioned. He got up and he encouraged union members to donate to Engage Canada, and they have said they have given money to Engage in the past. So this is the anti-Andrew Scheer union. So you saw the Unifor advertisement, which was just ubiquitous. We need a leader who's strong, not divisive politics. Yes, because Justin Trudeau's politics aren't divisive. See video beforehand. We need a leader, windmills, whatever. Then it was followed up, obviously, by 2 Engage things. So obviously these organizations are in cahoots, right? Obviously that's coordinated, and I'm fine with it. Now, what I'm not fine with is how unions don't really have opt-out clauses in Canada. This is what I've been saying this for a while. I think you should have the right to opt out of union duty fees, and it should come with drawbacks and whatever. It would make the unions focus more on the workers and less on ridiculous nonsense. And what do I mean by ridiculous nonsense? I mean them going to spend money enforcing or supporting terrorist marches. Now this isn't Unifor, this is CUPE at Al-Quds Day. Here is a video of me at the Al-Quds Day, which flew under there was a Hezbollah flag, there were calls for genocides of Jews, people there were talking about executing gays, and we'll get to some more clips later, but here is me getting physically pushed out by a CUP rep at Al-Quds Day who was in total badge supporting the event of terrorism in Canada. So let's see that.
Hi, excuse me. What media are you with?
Press TV.
Can I see your badge?
No.
Why not? If you would like to not photograph people, it would be great for you to be able to get out.
Okay. Do you have a permit to hold this march?
Yeah, actually. If you can please, thank you.
So you're from CUP, the union, the Canadian unions. So does the union support Hamas? So I'm, as we see, got physically pushed out, physically pushed there by the unions. CUP, do you support violence?
No, we don't. Please leave. We don't want you guys photographing.
So CUPE Ontario, here at our pro-terrorism march, do you support the Islamic Republic of Iran?
Please leave. We don't support anything. We're here for solidarity for Palestine.
So there it is. Now, was I assaulted? If I was a left-wing professor, I would be filing assault charges, but you just like push. It doesn't matter, all right? Who cares? But in 2017, Al-Quds Day, that organization invited Kevin Barrett, a noted Holocaust denier, to give a speech. He was invited to talk, and he talked about how Israel did 9/11. So is this union doing its due diligence? It represents 650,000 Canadians. Do 650,000 Canadians, do they support Hezbollah? Do they support Holocaust denial? Or do they think the Holocaust was an inside job? Do they think Israel did 9/11? Or do they think it was Al-Qaeda? Right? All these different things. So this is why I'm saying unions should have an ability to opt out. Because if you see UPE, and you know, hey, I pay union duty fees, and I don't want that going to support terrorist marches, I'm opting out. Then CUP would say, you know what, maybe we wouldn't, let's not be part of this anti-Israel nonsense so much. Or maybe, you know, let's take the political thing. So here's the benefits and drawbacks. It's easy, right? It's free market competition. Right? You shouldn't be able to fire someone for wanting to start a union, and the union shouldn't be able to exclude you if you don't want to pay the union fees. Right? You could say, oh, we negotiate for all contracts, right? And non-union workers there would receive the same money, but they wouldn't have to pay for union fees. And the drawbacks would be that if you get fired, or if there's layoffs, you might get more likely to be fired than a union person who would have a union rep go to bat for them. Right? You'd have to make yourself more valuable. You couldn't just fall back on the unions. Right? So that's the benefit of staying in the union is strength in numbers, and someone will protect your job in the terms of layoff. You would be more secure than the other workers. The other workers would get to keep their money, or more of their money, and if they start to support things that the union workers don't support, like if they start, you know, campaigning for, you know, Jack Layton or a candidate you don't like, you can say, no, I'm not paying for this. Then it would make unions say, you know what? We need those union fees. We need that money because we just want money. Screw the workers, right? Unions don't care about workers. But if they had a vested interest in caring about the workers, they would start to care about workers more. Because right now, because the workers have to pay union fees, right? There's no opt-out clauses. Right? They can just say, you know what? We support Al-Quds Day, and we want to spend your money on millions of dollars of union money advertising with Andrew Scheer and Doug Ford. We're just going to make ridiculous videos about Doug Ford and Andrew Scheer, and that's where we're going to spend our money. Because there's no benefit. You can't do anything. Screw you. You want to keep it working here? You got to pay the union fees. Oh, I wonder why all these organizations tend to be so mafia-controlled. So there's that. Now, that's another bad idea, is mandatory unions. Let's get back to Al-Quds Day now. So I've been sort of beating the horn of, you know, this anti-Zionism stuff is really the same thing as anti-Westernism, right? All these people who hate Jews under the guise of we're just criticizing Israel, death to Israel, I mean the Jews, I mean Israel, I mean Zionists, I don't know, something, and support suicide bombing. This is coming back at anti-Canadian. It's the exact same thing. So let's show some interviews from this year's Al-Quds. Same march in Toronto.
And Canada is a white supremacist, colonial, racist project, as is Israel, as is the state of Israel. So I don't even consider myself to be a Canadian because this is indigenous land and this land is occupied. So the people who are here, whether they are settlers, we firstly need to educate ourselves about what has happened on this land and what is continuously happening in order for us to be able to understand what our government or this government is doing on abroad and on overseas.
This is the resistance that we're going to continue to see, and as a result, neighboring countries and those who are fighting in solidarity all around the world will also rise with the Palestinians, and we will see in the next 20 to 25 years the decline and the ultimate destruction of the illegal Zionist state. This is for certain. This is not a conspiracy theory. The Zionist regime cannot continue to continue this path as injustice and all oppressors are doomed.
So a lot of things to unpack there. We'll first go with the woman who says, I didn't even see myself as a Canadian, right? This is, right, same thing. These are just Canadian settlers. This is indigenous land. So Canada is an illegitimate country. Benefits, please. And she's not going with an accent, Canada evil, like the Rebel interviewed a guy, and he was like, yeah, execute gay, Sharia law. This is not your country, it's mine. Right? She even says, our government. No, wait, this government, right? She even corrected herself. The other guy was just saying, your government, straight off the bat. This person said, our government, your government, the government. This is not my government. Not my president. That. So I've been trying to beat the drum that this anti-Zionism is really just globalism, right? Zionism and globalism are directly opposing ideologies because nationalism is the counter to globalism. And Zionism is just nationalism. It's just the name for the Israeli version of it. Because it's the Holy Land, Zion, biblically based, and all that. We're not going to get into the history of Zionism right now. But the point I want to make here is be very careful with these bad ideologies. And a lot of it is coming from academia, and a lot of it is coming from Islamism. And it's being disguised as anti-Zionism. But anti-Zionism is really anti-Westernism. It's the same thing. Find me someone who is an anti-Zionist who really loves the foundations of Western civilization. Now, there will be some crazy alt-right people there like, Zionism is a conspiracy. There's this one Jew who wrote something in 1657, and then his great-uncle was this, and his nephew said this. Okay, this is just, well, no. You don't need conspiracies when you have bad philosophies, because they take hold. So this is really a root of, I say, the cultural masochism. And this is why it starts with the anti-Zionism. But anti-Zionism and anti-Canadianism and all these anti-Zionists, when Israel is destroyed, as I said, Israel will be destroyed in 25 years. And if you notice, the other guy says, and all the other nations will rise up in the resistance. That's pretty much a call to terrorist acts. Maybe in Israel, maybe not. Maybe we're interpreting his words there. But you have this cultural masochism on the left, where we used to, I think it was unfair back in the day when people said, oh, the Democrats or the left, they just hate Canada, they hate America. And they would say, no, just because we criticize something doesn't mean we hate it, we love it, we just want to make it better. That was, that used to be the line, just how safe, legal, and rare used to be the line on abortions, but now it's shout your abortion, now it's death to America, is a progressive philosophy. So here's what I say this is, right? And this is why you see it from the whiteys on the left, too, and the alt-righters who are not part of Western civilization. They said, oh, socialism and white people, and right? World War II was about individual liberty, like the liberal countries, against Nazism. So we have this cultural masochism on the left, where we think, Canada, bad, we took indigenous land, bad, we're so evil. But the reason why you see it manifest in boycott Israel, do this to Israel, go in Israel, is because people are ultimately narcissistic. Black, white, Jewish, Christian, Muslim, Hindu, brown, people are narcissistic. It's a byproduct of life, is a bit of narcissism, okay? So when people who have this anti-Canadian, anti-Western ideas, right, they want to, say bad Canada, but where they really act it out is outside because, it's the Jewish part of the Western civilization. That's 1 degree of separation from me, so that's why I focus on it. Right? Then I can let my innate anti-Semitism, I can guise that as my liberal ideas, and we need to boycott Israel because it exists. So that's what I think a lot of that is. Now, the problem is, once that is done, right, you see these people. I don't even consider myself a Canadian, right? When Israel's destroyed, do you think that lady's going to be happy? Do you think she's going to be like, oh, now all the world's problems. Now, no longer is Iran going to kill gays and Baha'i people because Israel isn't there. No longer will Iran and Iraq go to war over nonsense because Israel doesn't exist. The civil war in Saudi Arabia, in Yemen, where Saudi Arabia and Iranian proxies are fighting, that will not happen if Israel isn't there, because there's so much peace in the Middle East outside of Israel. There isn't. Right? Do you think that the ideology is not just going to manifest as some sort of anti-Canadian, anti-Western attitude? And it will. It will metastasize. It's going to get out of control. And there are certain philosophies pushing it around. So let's talk about sort of the academic no-nos. Then we're going to get into Islamism because we've got to talk about Salim Mansur. So we talk a lot about neo-Marxism, postmodernism, and gender studies, identity politics. And I think Jordan Peterson says a lot of good things here. And people make the thing of like postmodernism and Marxism aren't actually related. They have a lot of different philosophies, and that's true. But the thing that sort of binds them together is this sort of cultural masochism, anti-Westernism, right? All these ideologies have a single goal to start with: topple the current structure and then replace it with the utopia. This is why socialists support all types of crazy ideas, because socialists always want a revolution. Whatever it is, knock it down and start again. And then it's never real socialism, it's never real communism, sure. So I don't think there is a postmodern neo-Marxist conspiracy. Doesn't make sense. Yes, there are professors pushing postmodernism. Yes, there's people trying to make Marxism a global thing. But it doesn't really need to be a conspiracy because it's already a philosophy. It's out there in the ether. Right? There's no dark room and 7 people pulling the strings of the postmodern world. Right? It's just an idea that's out there in the ether taking root, and it has dangerous consequences. So in this sort of postmodernism, which I remember taking a sociology class and just being blown away by how stupid it was. But this whole nothing is anything, there is no right or wrong, right? This is a very useful tool for people who want to sort of dig their head in the sand. Postmodernism is an excellent tool for reality deniers, right? People want to say, oh, 9/11, ISIS has nothing to do with Islam. Postmodernism is a great philosophy to get you to any ideological conclusion you want to, right? Because if there's multiple different interpretations, right? So this gets us to the sort of cultural relativism as well. Right? All cultures are equal. That's why we need diversity. Right? That makes no sense, that sentence, if you parse it apart. Right? Why is diversity good if all cultures are equal? Well, there's diversity and whatever. Right? This is why if there's no correct response, we can turn our brains off. And the reason why there's no, checks and balances in the system is because of cowardice, which we're going to get into very soon. Right? Fears of being called racist, fears of being called homophobic, fears of being called Islamophobic. These are so pervasive in our society, see the Salim Mansur case, that it shuts down the regular, things we need to. So we have an infestation of far-left ideas in the colleges. Is this a conspiracy? No, it's human nature. It's as the sciences get a bit left-wing, studies show that you put 10 moderate center-left people or 10 center-right people, same thing, center-something people. You put them in a room. 10 center-left people, after spending an hour in the room talking about politics, will all come out much further left-wing than they all went in as part of the group mentality. Same thing on the right. You put 6, 7, 10 moderate conservatives in the room, you have them in there for an hour talking about politics, they'll come out all more right-wing. It's how groups work, it's how humans work. You see this in the universities. It's been happening over decades at the universities as they become further and further and further and further and left. And as they become further and further and further left, they push themselves even more to the left. Right? It's not any nefarious conspiracy. Yes, George Soros is throwing money at bad ideas, but he really doesn't have as much control as people say he is. So you have that bad idea, right? And then neo-Marxism. So neo-Marxism is sort of identity politics. And neo-Marxism, how I interpret this is sort of taking the failed Marxist class structure. So Karl Marx, who helped the world get rid of 200 million people, which is probably why he's a hero of the left. Population control, yay. So Karl Marx, freeloading Thanos. Oh, I like that one. Remember when he lived in Engel's basement for a while? Anyway, communism, the philosophy someone came up with living on their friend's couch for years. Okay. So communism, socialism, right? Socialism, as the communists say, is the pathway towards communism, is all about class structure. So it's the rich, right, the bourgeoisie, or let's see, there's actually three classes. People don't talk about this. The aristocracy is what we think of as the bourgeoisie. There was aristocracy. These are the rich people, like the autocrats who control everything. Marx was just says, kill them, take their money, redistribute it. That was his thing. The bourgeoisie, people don't realize that if you're watching this show, you are part of the bourgeoisie. The bourgeoisie were the middle class, like the carpenter. The bourgeoisie were the people who had enough money to sort of pursue lives. Like the proletariat are people who are working paycheck to paycheck, who don't have disposable income, who are just in there sort of slaves to the factory. Right? We've sort of eliminated that. You all have smartphones. You're watching this on a computer. Right? You know, some of you, I'm not saying you don't financially struggle, but it's your financial situation, probably compared to a 18th century Russian peasant, you're probably doing comparatively pretty well. Capitalism killed the proletariat and turned them all into the bourgeoisie. It's not a bad thing, right? It's good that people's standard of living has gone up. So this failed class structure, which led to so many things, right? The neo-Marxist philosophy is, well, everything is about oppressors and the oppressed, right? We saw that in the Israel-Palestine thing. Israel has more money than the Palestinians, even though we throw billions of dollars at the Palestinians every year. Therefore, Israel is oppressing the Palestinians, right? Israel only has money because Palestine does not have money. It's a complete binary. It's a flawed economic concept, right? The 1%, right? Because the corporations and the 1% and Bill Gates, he has money. It's your money. It's really your money. It's my money. So give me your money, and I, Bernie Sanders, will be the best president ever. And that's why we need to go to the Soviet Union and we need to take our shirts off and we need to sing the anthem of the Soviet Union, and also bread lines. Bread lines are great because it's everything you need. You get bread and there's a line and it's very straight and I can follow it, because when things get curvy, my vision gets all crazy and I don't know if it's one line or two lines and how many percent of people are in the lines. So that is the sort of neo-Marxist philosophy is, right, you only have money because he doesn't have money because you have money. It's everything's in a net-sum game. It's a complete flawed concept of economics. I wish I had time to get into it. So those are destructive philosophies because it's easy. It's really, really easy. It's really, really easy to go to university, be thrown some postmodern neo-Marxist mumbo-jumbo at you, and come out the other end. Because if there's no right answers, if everything's, everything's kind of the right answer, right? You just kind of know what words to say. You just have to take a feeling. We saw this in the new hoaxes, right? Remember when there was a paper that got published in a gender studies journal on dog park rape. It was a complete hoax, right? Right? It's so easy, right? And you can be an intellectual for the low, low price of one neuron, with one functioning neuron. You can be a sociology professor. You can get a PhD in sociology. With one, maybe two functioning neurons, you can get a doctorate in something in the West. That's a pretty powerful thing, right? You go there, and as a student, you just write down, the West is bad, and we stole everyone's land, and Israel is bad, and Jews are good, but we should kill them all, and something, something, something. Every time a black person stubs his toe, it's because a white person didn't stub their toe. 90%, A+. Now, if you get an A+, are you going to say, I get that A+ because I'm really smart and I deserve an A+. I go to university and I'm a 90 student. Or are you going to say, yeah, it was just a bunch of ideological nonsense and I only got an A+ because everyone's here ideologically brainwashed. You're a human being. You're probably going to err on the side of, I'm really smart. It's true. So we have that philosophy. Now, one of the most dangerous philosophies, because it's strident, pervasive, and explosive, Islamism. Now this is the political Islam. This is not Muslims, this is not Islam, this is Islamism. This is the political philosophy of Islam, right? This is Islam should be in politics. We have the Islamic Party of Ontario, different Islamic parties in Belgium. This is the trying to get a separate legal system for Muslims, right? Trying to institute Sharia law, that's Islamism, right? All the Muslim Brotherhood organizations that we've gone over thousands of times, that is Islamism. Okay? That's a problem. So who should be standing up to it? We all talk about we need moderate Muslims to stand up to Islam, and I agree. And now I've said we need more than just moderate Muslims. It's a whole cultural problem. We all have to be involved in it. But we'll say friend of the show, someone I know, someone who people I work with are very close with, Salim Mansur, Salim Mansur is a professor at Western University. He's a political science professor. He is a religious Muslim. He is the author of this book, The Quran Problem and Islamism. So here's a moderate Muslim talking about different problems with Islamism and the Muslim Brotherhood and what's the difference between Islam, right? Chapter 1, Islam and Islamism, right? He makes a distinction between the two there. On the historical Muhammad, putting Muhammad in a historical context, right? And then putting the Quran in a historical context, the different problems there. Arab and Muslim anti-Semitism, right? He's talking about the elephant in the room. This is someone we need in the Conservative Party, but he was disqualified from running because of fears of being called Islamophobic from Islamists. Now we have Islamists in the Conservative Party. So here's some other books. So this is a political science professor who has written this book, Detectable Lie, A Liberal Repudiation of Multiculturalism. In that book, he takes down this jabber of the multicultural philosophy from a liberal perspective. Islam's Predicament, Perspective on a Dissident Muslim, right? Some problems facing the modern Islamic world. And the Aaron Shah Years Review, Indian Economy and Polity from 1966 to 1991. Right, so here's someone who is a political science professor, is able to do an economic analysis over a 25-year period, who is a big fan of Canadian values. Religious Muslim, fan of Canadian values. You know, actually attacks, you know, nonsense far-left ideologies in an intelligent, coherent way. This man was barred from running for Conservative office because, okay, so there are two theories here. The story they're going with, and it's smart to go with the story, is we're not letting him run because we are afraid that people will call us Islamophobic if we let Salim Mansur run. Now, I think that is extreme cowardice to minimal provocation. The other philosophy that people will go with is the Conservative Party is controlled by the Muslim Brotherhood, and the actual Islamists within the Muslim Brotherhood prevented this man from running. Now, we've talked about Muslim Brotherhood affiliated people who are high up in the Conservative Party. Talked about them, right? Waleed Solomon. Now, I am a believer that it's actually both of these things, right? It's not one or the other, it's a little bit of both, is my guess here. Now, again, I don't know Andrew Scheer's mind. I don't know what the people were talking about when they made this decision, but I think this is a problem of, one, you have political interests in the Conservative Party who are trying to take out liberal Muslims who actually stand for conservative Canadian values and love our country. And two, the Conservatives are afraid of their own shadow that if Andrew Scheer is so afraid of losing the NDP base, because if all the people who will never vote for him in a billion years don't vote for him or think he's evil, oh no. Right? This is why we can't have nice things. It pisses me off. It pisses me off because who do we need to make the case? We need people like Salim Mansur. Someone who will say there's a difference between Islam and Islamism. Here's a contextual analysis of the Quran. Guys, I'm a religious Muslim, and I think Canada is great, and we have a real problem with people not integrating. We just saw that. We just saw the video of people at All Goods Day. People look like they've been in Canada for at least 20 years. Speaking of the Canadian accent, like, oh my God, like I'm not even Canadian, because like Canada's like totally colonized, and it's like a white supremacist state. Just like Israel. Israel's like white supremacists. Because like Jews are white. I love this. Now if Jews are white, does that make Jesus white? Because Jesus was a Jew from Judea, and if those are white people, then Jesus actually was white. Now I don't think the color of Jesus matters one iota, but the left does. But Jews are white. Jews are not in Judea, but Jesus, a Jew born in Judea, is not white. Right? It's the same thing, right? We need multiculturalism because all cultures are the same. That's why diversity is a strength. The sentence doesn't make sense from front to back. It never has. It's all this rhetoric. And this rhetoric is being enabled by bad ideas and more often than not, cowardice. The biggest problem Canada has, and Andrew Scheer is as cowardly as he is big, is moral cowardice. It's the inability to stand up for good ideas. All these bad ideas can be defeated if people were willing to speak out in an articulate manner and say no. If Andrew Scheer was just able to say, hey, you know what? Trump said some crazy things and people are okay with it because he just ran through the stop sign. There shouldn't be 15 different stop signs in an intersection. You need one. One is for a society. Right? You can't have stop signs in the middle of the road, only at intersections. But we have to stop at all of them now because the left says so. Right? Just stand up for yourself. Stand up for conservative values. When someone says Salim Mansur is an Islamophobe, you say, no, he is not. He is a religious Muslim. This is ridiculous. You are ridiculous. End of story. But the second you start to apologize for nothing, you only validate the insanity. This is the same thing. You see this with all different type of people. Like it's the same thing with the left-wing Jewish organizations, like the If Not Now, Jewish Voice for Peace, J Street people, letting listed known anti-Semites come and give speeches on why we need to be less Islamophobic. And just what are they doing? They're digging their heads in the sand, hoping that they're going to be the last ones thrown into the oven. And now this is the mentality of the Conservative Party of Canada. The Conservative Party of Canada should meet up with all the left-wing death to the Jews and just have a great party. Because it's the exact same thing. It's the moral cowardice. It's the inability to stand up for yourself when you're clearly right, and fears of hurting other people's feelings. We live in a ridiculous society, right, with identity politics. We're now at a point in our society where, okay, we just had a Christian pastor arrested for preaching Christianity in Church in Wellesley at the Gay Pride Parade, right? Preaching Christianity. Now, I don't think that's an effective way to get your message out, but you have the total right to do it. What they happened to is a complete shame. But we're now in a ridiculous point in society on the LGBTQ Muslim issue, where it is more socially acceptable to be openly homophobic than it is to call out the massive amounts of homophobia from the Islamic part of our society. Over 50% of Muslims in Britain think it should be illegal to be homosexual. Illegal! Isn't that a problem? Is that a glaring problem we need to talk about? I think so. Can we talk about it, please? But pointing it out gets you in more trouble than actually being a homophobe. It's ridiculous. Now, homophobia also gets you in trouble, and it only really gets you in trouble if you're a Christian doing it, right? Right? The foreign minister of Iran, or former foreign minister, Javad Zarif, just said, yeah, we execute gays because it's consistent with our values. That's what we do. And this guy is the Obama's friend, pushing like, yeah, Iran's so liberal. They just they don't kill the gays, they execute them. It's so chic. Where the oppression Olympics isn't even interesting anymore because Team Islamist won it. It's over. Right? It hasn't been interesting since 2016 and the Orlando nightclub shooting. That's when Team Islam just took off. The Orlando nightclub shooting was probably the greatest single game performance at the oppression Olympics I've ever seen. Michael Jordan isn't even that good at the oppression Olympics. Think of it. The guy goes into a gay nightclub, starts shooting up everywhere. The worst mass shooting in American history. It was a Muslim guy. He went to a he went to a mosque that the week beforehand invited a preacher from Iran to talk about executing gays. Then he goes into a nightclub, kills over 50 gays. The only reason it wasn't 70 or 80 is because he stopped in the middle of the massacre to call the police and say, hey guys, hi, it's me, the jihadist, yes, it's me. I'm murdering people at a nightclub now because they're gay, and I just want to let you know that I'm doing this for ISIS ideology, for Islam. So, Islam. I'm currently murdering people for Islam because they're gay. I just want you to get that because God forbid that I kill all these people and people start saying it's not because of Islam. That would be ridiculous. So I just want to take time out of my massacre to let you know I am doing this for Islam. Yes, okay. Yeah, I as in Israel, which we will destroy. Yeah. S as in Sunni or Shia. L as in lashings. No, lashings, as in the homosexuals will get lashings. Yes, L, yes. A as in Allah. And M as in motorboat. As in, I'm going to motorboat those titties. Yeah, so Islam. I'm doing this for Islam. Thank you. That really happened. That was a 10-minute conversation. He was on the police for 10 minutes just trying to say, ISIS, great, me Muslim, killing gays for Islam. Then they released a redacted strip, and then the next part is like, we may never know why this happened. We may never know. Then we get the gay community coming to Orlando nightclub to talk about how Christian homophobia made this possible. Are you fucking kidding me? And that was the day that the Oppression Olympics was over and we declared the all-time champion to be Team Muslim Brotherhood. Because how insane was that whole thing? Oh, what's the motive? We don't know. Could you imagine if a Christian person went into a gay nightclub, killed a bunch of people? They found out a week before his church had invited someone with a history of calling for the death of gays to talk. Do you think that would have made the news? Do you think we would have banned that preacher from whatever? Do you think it would not be... But instead, Muslim kills gays for Islam, spends time on the phone, takes time out of his massacre to explain the reasoning behind his massacre. People get up the next day. Who did this? I see this crescent moon. That means it's Jesus. This is why we can't have nice things. Right? Too many bad ideas. Just so many bad ideas. And the worst part of it is the cowardice. It's the cowardice. It's that no one finally stands up for the truth. It's that Andrew Scheer, our glorious leader, doesn't have a pair in between his legs. I mean, despite his best efforts, I'm going to vote for him because Bernier stands no chance. But the person trying hardest to convince me to vote for Maxime Bernier is not Maxime Bernier, it's Andrew Scheer. As I said, I'm going to vote for Andrew Scheer and then I'm going to join the PPC. Because I think Trudeau is that much of a danger. Now, okay, we have to talk about this. I almost forgot about this. There was a potential terrorist attack a couple weeks ago at Pearson Airport. And this is kind of shows like, I think this is the perfect illustration of where we are as a society. So a man, we don't know anything about this, rammed an airplane 3 times in one of his trucks. 5 people were sent to hospital. No one knew anything about this until Linda Fromm, the only reason the Canadian Senate should exist right now, she's like Nikki Haley up there, God bless her, gets up and says, where's the freedom of information? Why are we not allowed to have any information about this? Then people at the Sun picked up and said, hey, this is an interesting story. So a man rams an airplane 3 times. 1 time, it happens all the time. People are poorly trained there. They don't make a lot of money. Whatever. 2 times, gross incompetence. 3 times you ran the plane. That sounds like a terrorist attack to me. This also happened during the month of peace, known as Ramadan, where peacefulness increases. You get about a 150 to 250 attacks of peace per Ramadan. This is because rewards are tripled during Ramadan. Now, we'll just parse this out. You're more likely to get a Muslim who will do more charity during Ramadan, right? Charitable donations increase during Ramadan more than terrorist attacks do, right? If that's your brand of Islam, doing good things, you're more likely to do it in Ramadan when the rewards are higher. But if you subscribe to an Islamist, jihadist ideology of Islam, which hundreds of thousands of people do, it's the 1% of the 1% who are the bad ones. The ISIS, there's 1.8 billion to 1.5 billion Muslims in the world. 1% of 1% is 150 to 180,000 people. That is the standing power of the Roman legion during the empire's heyday. Give or take 10,000 or so. Is that not a problem? So during the month of peace, the peacefulness increases. So when no one says anything about a ramming at an airport, you're likely to think that this is an attack of peace from the religion of peace. It was a peaceful hug. They tried to hug the airplane with peace 3 times. And now, this would not have been a huge story if someone had just covered it originally. If we just said, yes, there was an attack in Pearson Airport, it's under control, no one was killed, it's being taken care of. Right? Then we have confidence in the system. Right? They caught the guy, nothing bad happened, it's being handled. But instead, there's a complete conspiracy of silence. One, because maybe people are afraid of being accused of Islamophobia. It might not even be a Muslim. We just don't know anything about it. Which makes people think, oh, it happened during Ramadan. It looks like a terrorist attack. That means it's probably a terrorist attack of peace. Right? And I don't want to just go into, well, it was this, and this, we don't know. And the complete lack of information here is kind of startling. Usually when things happen at airports, it makes news, right? Remember the plane in Malaysia went disappearing and CNN spent 70 days, 24-hour coverage on a missing plane? We're fascinated by airplanes. It's part of the human experience. That's why we go to space and spend billions and trillions of dollars going to space and we never explore the oceans. Ooh, look up there. It's heaven. That's hell. I think this stuff interests us, but no one talks about it? It's ridiculous. All right. Ooh, that was a good solid hour of ranting. All right, team. That concludes this week's episode. Thank you so much for being here. Please like the page or subscribe to the YouTube channel or do everything. You know, like or share the video, because every time you don't share one of my videos, an angel gets diabetes. So you can't have that happen. Go Raptors. See you next Wednesday. In a world gone mad, only one man, okay, maybe more, had the courage to ramble on incoherently. The show is up and the reviews are in. This is the show that many people have described as good. Uninterrupted, Wednesday nights on Tag TV. We're good? Okay.